Jacqueline Copeland, Pennsylvania. Thank you, Chair. I know it's been a long day, guys, but I would greatly appreciate it if I could have a little of your time. American citizens have made clear that they despise partisanship, hate corruption, and value higher education. However, as demonstrated by and due to the party line voting on healthcare reform and the current financial crisis, we are not progressing towards the goals of bipartisanship and affordable higher education. In order to combat these obstacles we do so despise, we must begin by aiding the young men and women who will fill these vital roles in our government. Unfortunately, careers in the public sector of government tend to compensate less than similar careers in the public sector. Often, some of the best and brightest in their field go into the private sector because of this economic reality, compounded with the impact of student loan payments after college. In order to make these public sector careers more attractive to these talented individuals, we must defer costs to some extent. The creation of the Civilian Government Career Advancement Program would allow high-achieving students to receive a full tuition scholarship for 1 to 4 years. In turn, they would owe the government a certain number of years in a federal department-level position, such as a position in the Department of Agriculture or Department of Health and Human Services. Through this program, the individual, the community, and the government all benefit greatly. The individual, of course, benefits by receiving college funds and a guaranteed job, but they also are given the opportunity to serve their country in a way that they would not be able to do in the private sector. When the individual leaves after their service commitment, if they choose to do so, though they by no means have to, they bring into the community all the leadership and government experience gained during employment, thus increasing awareness within the community. Through this program, the government gains workers who are highly educated and specialized in their specific field, and therefore have a certain degree of expertise. It also brings in fresh faces and fresh ideas, aiding in the creation of a more open-minded, bipartisan government. By implementing the Civilian Government Career Advancement Program, we can work towards our country's goals by starting from the ground up with our nation's talented young men and women. I yield my time to my summation speech.
Madam Chair, Adam Faulkner, Republic of Texas. First, I'm not entirely sure that the numbers on this proposal are entirely accurate. It says that this program will only cost $200 million. I did some math, and I estimate that it will cost $348 billion. This is more than 1,700 times as much, and this will be part of the federal deficit. There's something else you may not have noticed. Line 95 states that this new program would aid in creating a higher standard of qualification. I do not believe this. The only qualifications are an appropriately aged U.S. citizen who makes extremely minimal academic requirements. A good example of this is the University of Texas. Over 90% of the in-state students there are there because the government requires them to be admitted under a top 10% rule. This makes it very difficult for a well-qualified non-top 10% in-state student to be admitted. This proposal will compound the problem. To be accepted to most universities, currently students must have an SAT score of about 1,400, not including the writing section. Under this proposal, the score, I estimate, would be about 1,066. This is about 23% lower. These universities would hate this. This would make them turn away qualified people in favor of the required people. Personally, I believe universities ought to have their own choice of who attends, not the government. This is also not a scholarship. This is a loan. This takes advantage of needy students and enslaves them to our government. They must pay back the entire cost within 3 years, which is an unbearable burden and will force them into bankruptcy, or they will be required by law to work for the federal government for up to 5 years. Keep in mind that this proposal is intended to create incentive for people to work in the government. This alone, the need to create incentive, is proof these jobs are undesirable. Therefore, I feel that it's an accurate description to call it slavery. Of course, we are getting a free education through that. Also, I don't think that we have enough government jobs to provide for 3,000 students a year for 5 years. This would leave about 15,000 government employees without a job. In conclusion, please vote against this, as it takes freedom away from our universities and enslaves students to the government. Thank you.
Body from the Republic of Mississippi. Wouldn't it be great to wake up in the morning and see that America is first in education again for a while? First of all, what this bill is trying to do is not enslave people to the federal government. What it's trying to do is encourage students to fight harder, to compete more in their education. First of all, most of the requirements in this bill to apply for this scholarship, major universities already have. For example, Harvard and Yale, you have to have a high GPA, you have to be a United States citizen, the qualifications go on. And in reference to a previous delegate, this in no way affects the federal deficit. When Congress passes a budget for FY, whatever year, they set aside an appropriate amount of money for education. They do it for all departments. To say that this raises the federal deficit and it doesn't, this is just as ludicrous. And I also want to point, we have to have educational reform because, for example, in the state of Florida, when Jeb Bush was governor, he reformed education. He took the Democrats and he took the Republicans and he both talked about how important education was. And when he became governor, they were 39th in education. When he was done, they became 8th in education. You take all the Hispanic students out, they outrank 30 known states in education. You take all the black students out, they outrank 25 students in education. There's a reason for that. Why? Because he encouraged competition among students to have a brighter and greater education. I yield the rest of my time to Arthur Summers.
United Nations, thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to I'm going to offer you a series of questions. Will the author yield?
Yes.
How did you come up with the number of 3,000?
Well, that is approximately 15% of what ROTC currently has enrolled.
Okay. There's approximately 5,000 students at Harvard. Not to mention Princeton, Yale, Berkeley, UPenn. There's no way, and all those schools require at least a 2,000. A 3.7 is a minimal GPA for them. And on top of that, ACT score of 30 is minimal for them. Most kids that go to Harvard, Princeton, Yale get a 2,400. That's 5,000 kids per school. That's 15,000 kids if I did my math right. It's way more than 3,000. Though I applaud the author's intent, the burden this would put on our economy which is in recession and already has a huge debt, is unbearable. I yield the remainder of my time to DC 11.
I'm sorry, that's not order. You did not reserve that right at the beginning.
John Pope, Pennsylvania delegation. I reserve my right to yield to Delegate Hinkin from Pennsylvania.
That is your right.
I've been confused by the debate that's been going on so far. I can find none of it to be relevant to the proposal at all, actually. The proposal nowhere says that colleges are required to admit these people. Nowhere does it say that it's going to affect how colleges make their requirements to admit people. All the proposal is doing is creating a program much like ROTC, where students will compete based off the guidelines in the proposal to get a scholarship. And then once they receive the scholarship, they're obligated to serve in the U.S. government. They will serve for 5 years in an effort to give back in service what they've received in their scholarship. It's not slavery or any sort of indentured servitude. It's the same thing that happens in ROTC right now. I yield my time for my fellow delegate.
You have yielded 55 seconds.
Brendan Hagen, Pennsylvania, thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I would like to state that a previous speaker did some math. That speaker did not share his methods, whereas the author did. The United States military is the largest scholarship provider in the United States of America, and that is a wonderful thing. Why can't the federal government do the same thing? We need the best and the brightest. We need these talented, intelligent individuals. They need government experience. Our government needs them. They will get superior service, and they will provide superior service. This is an excellent option for those who require a scholarship. This will greatly augment the federal government. This will augment their skills, and I strongly encourage you to vote pro on this proposal. Thank you.